My name is Arlene, and I am 32 years old. I never imagined that standing up for my little sister would tear our family apart. For years, my stepfather Derek had been slowly destroying Hannah's self-image with his constant concerns about her weight. When I finally confronted him, my own mother chose his side. It wasn't until Hannah collapsed at school and ended up in the hospital that Mum finally saw the truth. The damage was already done though, and I wonder if our family will ever truly heal. Before I take you through the heartbreaking reality of watching my sister suffer, drop a comment where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever stood up for someone when nobody else would. Growing up, it was just me, my mum Diane, and my little sister Hannah. Our dad died in a car accident when I was 8 years old and Hannah was just a newborn. His death hit our family hard, not just emotionally, but financially too. Mum had to work multiple jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. She worked as a waitress during the day and cleaned offices at night, often leaving me to take care of Hannah. I did not mind the responsibility. Even as a child, I took pride in being Hannah's big sister and protector. I would feed her, change her diapers, rock her to sleep when she was fussy, and as she grew older, I would read to her, help with her homework, and listen to her stories about school. This early responsibility created a bond between us that was more than just sisters. In many ways, I was like a second mother to Hannah, and she looked up to me with a trust and love that made all the sacrifices worthwhile. Our mum did her best working herself to exhaustion to provide for us. When she was home, she would try to make up for lost time by baking cookies with us or having movie nights where we would all squeeze onto our old sofa with a bowl of popcorn. Those moments were rare but precious. When I was 18 and Hannah was 10, Mum met Derek at the restaurant where she worked. He was a regular customer, a financial advisor who always sat in her section and left generous tips. At first, Mum would just mention him in passing, telling us about this nice man who complimented her service. Then one day, she came home with a smile I had not seen in years and told us that Derek had asked her out on a date. I still remember how nervous she was before that first date, trying on different outfits and asking for my opinion. She looked beautiful in a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, her blonde hair styled in soft curls. Hannah and I gave her a thumbs up and wished her luck. Derek seemed perfect on paper. He was charming, financially stable, and seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our lives. He would bring small gifts for Hannah and me when he came over, ask about our interests, and listen attentively when we spoke. He took us to restaurants nicer than we had ever been to, and to the movies, where we could get any snacks we wanted. After years of struggling, it felt like our family was finally catching a break. The proposal came after a year of dating. Derek took all three of us to a fancy restaurant and got down on one knee. Mum cried happy tears and Hannah clapped excitedly. I was happy for Mum, but could not help feeling a little apprehensive. Things were changing fast, and I worried about how a new person would fit into our tight-knit family unit. Still, Derek had given us no reason to doubt his intentions, and Mum deserved happiness after all she had sacrificed for us. The wedding was small but lovely, held in a local garden when Hannah was 12. Both of us served as bridesmaids wearing matching lavender dresses. Mum glowed with happiness as she said her vows, and Derek looked at her with what I believed was genuine love. As they exchanged rings, I made a silent promise to myself to support their marriage and embrace Derek as part of our family. The first year of their marriage seemed perfect. Derek moved us into his larger house in a nicer neighborhood, and for the first time, Hannah and I each had our own bedroom. Mum was able to quit her night job and spend more time at home. We went on family vacations to places like Disney World and the beach, creating memories filled with laughter and joy. Hannah was beginning to blossom into a teenager, her body developing curves similar to our mother's natural shape. She had always been a happy, confident child with a bubbly personality that drew people to her. She joined the swim team at her new school and made friends quickly. I was proud of how well she was adjusting to all the changes in our lives. Looking back now, I can see the first subtle signs of Derek's discomfort with Hannah's developing body. Small comments about the amount of food on her plate at dinner. A suggestion that maybe she should go for a run instead of watching TV. At the time, I dismissed these as him adjusting to parenting a teenage girl. I thought perhaps he was just being protective or health conscious. When I moved out to attend college about an hour away, I still visited regularly at least twice a month. I began to notice gradual changes in the atmosphere at home. The lightness and joy I had observed during the first year of their marriage seemed to be fading, especially when it came to Hannah. She was quieter during my visits, less likely to share stories about school or her friends. I noticed she had started wearing baggier clothes, hiding the body that was naturally developing into a healthy young woman's figure. Something was changing in our once happy home, but I could not quite put my finger on what it was. If only I had paid closer attention sooner. If only I had recognized the warning signs before things escalated to a point of no return. The first explicit incident happened when Hannah was 14. I was home from college for the weekend and we were having a family dinner. Hannah reached for a second dinner roll and Derek said, "Whoa there, Hannah Banana. Are you sure you need that? Summer is coming and you want to look good in your swimsuit, right?" The comment hung in the air for a moment. Hannah's hand froze midway to the bread basket, her cheeks flushing red with embarrassment. Mum laughed uncomfortably and said, "Derek, stop it." But her tone was light dismissive, as if he had just told a slightly off-colour joke, rather than publicly shamed her daughter. Hannah withdrew her hand and stared down at her plate. "I am not really that hungry anyway," she mumbled, though I had heard her stomach growling earlier when we were watching TV before dinner. After that night, I began noticing a pattern. Derek would make comments about Hannah's weight or eating habits, always framed as concern for her health. "I just want you to be healthy," he would say. "Obesity runs in some families, and I do not want you to struggle with that." He never mentioned that our mother, his wife, had the same body type, as Hannah was naturally developing, and he certainly never commented on Mum's appearance or eating habits. During one visit, I found Hannah alone in the kitchen staring into the refrigerator. When I asked what she was looking for, she sighed and said, "Something Derek would approve of. He said I should focus on proteins and vegetables and avoid carbs and sugar." "Since when do you need Derek's approval for what you eat?" I asked, concerned by the defeated look on my usually spirited sister's face. Hannah shrugged. "He just wants me to be healthy," she echoed his words. "And maybe he's right. Some of the girls on the swim team are much thinner than me." I tried to reassure her. "Hannah, everyone's body is different. You're perfectly healthy. You're an athlete, for goodness sake." She gave me a small smile that did not reach her eyes. "It is fine, Arlene. It is not a big deal." But I could see it was a big deal. Hannah was wearing baggier clothes, and when we went shopping, she would tug at tops that showed any hint of her stomach or chest. She was becoming increasingly self-conscious about her appearance in a way that broke my heart. I decided to talk to Mum about it. I caught her alone one afternoon when Derek was playing golf and Hannah was at a friend's house. "Have you noticed how Derek talks to Hannah about her body?" I asked, keeping my tone casual to avoid sounding accusatory. Mum looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "The comments about her weight, the food policing. It seems to be affecting her confidence." Mum's expression changed to one of mild annoyance. "Derek is just looking out for her. Teenage girls can develop unhealthy eating habits, and he wants to make sure she's setting good patterns now. But Mum, Hannah has always had a healthy relationship with food, and she's active with swimming. I am worried these comments are doing more harm than good." "You're being overprotective, Arlene. Derek cares about Hannah and wants what is best for her. Besides, you're not here every day. You do not see how much junk food she'd eat if someone didn't guide her a little." I felt dismissed and frustrated, but I dropped the subject. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe, as Mum said, I wasn't there enough to see the full picture. A few weeks later, Derek implemented what he called a family health kick. On the surface, it seemed positive, focusing on nutritious meals and regular exercise. But I noticed that the rules seemed to apply more strictly to Hannah than anyone else. Derek would serve the meals, controlling portions, giving Hannah noticeably less than everyone else. He bought a bathroom scale and encouraged daily weigh, in a practice I knew from my psychology classes could be dangerously triggering for teenagers already concerned about their bodies. Hannah started finding reasons to skip family meals. "I already ate at Sarah's house," she would say, or "I have a big project to finish." I caught her once hiding in her room with just an apple for dinner, claiming she wasn't hungry for the spaghetti Mum had made. The vibrant, confident girl who used to cannonball into the pool and laugh with her friends was disappearing. In her place was a quiet, anxious teen who seemed to be constantly calculating, constantly aware of being watched and judged. During one of my visits, I tried to talk to Hannah again. We were in her room looking through old photo albums. There was a picture of Hannah at 10, beaming at the camera in her swimsuit, proudly showing off the blue ribbon she had won at her first swim meet. "You were so happy there," I said, pointing to the photo. "I was fat," she replied immediately. I was shocked. "What? No, you weren't. You were a healthy, normal 10-year-old. Hannah shrugged. "Derek said I've always been on the chunky side. He found some of my old photos and pointed it out. Said it's good I'm finally taking my health seriously. My heart sank. Derek was not only criticizing her current appearance, but retroactively tainting her happy memories by suggesting she had always been overweight, which was simply untrue. The tension between Derek and me grew with each visit. He would make passive-aggressive comments when I brought treats for Hannah, or suggested we go out for ice cream. I see the health consciousness doesn't run in the family, he would say with a tight smile. I started to dread family gatherings, knowing I would have to witness Hannah being subtly demeaned while trying to maintain peace for my mother's sake. The situation was getting worse, and I felt increasingly helpless to protect my little sister from the man who should have been a source of support and security in her life. By the time Hannah turned 15, the changes in her appearance became alarmingly obvious. She had lost a significant amount of weight in a short period. Her once rosy cheeks were pale and dark circles had formed under her eyes. Her swim coach had apparently expressed concerns about her energy levels during practice, but Derek dismissed it as normal teenage tiredness from staying up too late on that phone. During a weekend visit, I found Hannah crying in her bedroom. When I knocked and entered, she quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting beside her on the bed. "Nothing, just stressed about school," she replied, but her voice trembled slightly. "Hannah, I know when something's bothering you. We've always been honest with each other. Please talk to me." She shook her head, lips pressed tightly together as if physically restraining the words. "I can't. It's fine. I'm just being dramatic." Later that evening, I overheard Derek talking to Hannah in the kitchen. I had gone downstairs for a glass of water when I heard his voice low but stern. "You're still not trying hard enough, Hannah. I saw you take seconds at dinner. If you're serious about being healthy, you need to show some self-control." My sister's response was barely audible. "I was still hungry. I had practice today." "That's just an excuse. You need to want this more. Look at the girls on your swim team. Don't you want to look like them? Don't you want boys to notice you for the right reasons?" I stepped into the kitchen, making my presence known. Hannah looked up, face flushed with humiliation, while Derek's expression shifted instantly to casual friendliness. "Hey there, Arlene. Just having a little health chat with Hannah. You know how teenagers need guidance." After Hannah went upstairs, I confronted Derek. "I think you're being too hard on her about her weight. She's a healthy, active teenager, and those comments about her appearance aren't helpful." Derek's friendly demeanor cooled. "With all due respect, Arlene, you're not her parent. Childhood obesity is an epidemic, and I'm trying to make sure Hannah doesn't develop unhealthy habits that will follow her into adulthood." "Hannah is not obese," I said firmly. "She never has been, and your guidance is making her miserable." Derek called for my mother, who came into the kitchen looking concerned. "What's going on? Arlene thinks I'm too strict about Hannah's diet." Derek explained his tone, suggesting this was a ridiculous notion. I expected Mum to at least consider my concerns, but she immediately sided with Derek. "Hannah needs structure, Arlene. You're not here every day. You don't see the whole picture. Derek is trying to teach her good habits by making her feel bad about herself, by monitoring every bite she takes." Mum's face hardened. "You're undermining our parenting. We're doing what's best for Hannah." I left the conversation feeling defeated and increasingly worried. The united front my mother and Derek presented made it difficult to advocate for Hannah effectively. Over the next few months, Hannah's decline continued. Her grades began to slip unusual for a previously strong student. She quit the swim team, claiming she just wasn't into it anymore, though swimming had been her passion since childhood. Her once vibrant social life dwindled with fewer friends calling or visiting. One afternoon, I received a call from Hannah's friend Sarah. We had exchanged numbers years ago for emergencies, so I was surprised to hear from her. "I'm really worried about Hannah," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern. "She's barely eating at lunch. She just moves food around her plate and throws most of it away. And yesterday, I heard her throwing up in the bathroom after she had a yogurt." My blood ran cold. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "I tried telling a teacher, but Hannah denied everything and got mad at me. She made me promise not to say anything to her parents, but I thought maybe you could help." I thanked Sarah for her courage in reaching out and promised to check on Hannah. The next weekend, I made an unannounced visit. Hannah was in her room, and when she hugged me, I could feel her bones through her sweatshirt. While she was in the bathroom, I did something I had never done before I searched her room. Under her mattress, I found a stash of diet pills, laxatives, answers, and a small notebook where she recorded every calorie consumed and exercised, away with harsh self-criticisms on days when she went over her dangerously low-calorie goal. When Hannah returned and saw what I had discovered, her face crumpled. "Please don't tell Mom and Derek," she begged, tears streaming down her face. Derek will say I'm not trying hard enough on my own and Mum will be so disappointed. I sat her down, holding her cold hands in mine. Hannah, this is serious. You're hurting yourself. Please tell me what's been going on, the whole truth. Through tears and halting words, Hannah revealed the extent of Derek's daily criticism. How he would make comments about the jiggle of her thighs when she walked. How he bought her clothes a size too small as motivation. How he would compare her to slimmer girls at school or on TV. How he kept a chart of her weight in his office, documenting every fluctuation with clinical detachment. I just want him to be proud of me, Hannah whispered. I just want to be good enough. She admitted to extreme dieting, allowing herself only 500 calories a day. She described exercising secretly in her room late at night, doing hundreds of jumping jacks and sit-ups until she felt faint. She confessed to making herself throw up when she felt she had eaten too much, or when the guilt became overwhelming. I noticed bruising on her knuckles, a telltale sign of purging. Her skin was dry, her hair thin and brittle. When I asked her to try on my fitness watch, her resting heart rate was alarmingly low. A week later, Hannah's school counselor called my mother, expressing concern about Hannah's weight loss and declining academic performance. The counselor suggested a medical evaluation and mentioned the possibility of an eating disorder. Derek was present during the call and afterward convinced my mother it was just teenage drama and that the school was overreacting. The counselor didn't understand their family health journey, but he insisted. I knew then that I couldn't stay silent any longer. My sister's life was at stake, and if our mother wouldn't see the truth, I would have to make her see it no matter the cost to our family's harmony. The final straw came on Hannah's 16th birthday. Mum had organised a small dinner at home with Hannah's favourite foods, or at least what used to be her favourites, before food became the enemy. Hannah sat at the table pushing pasta around her plate without eating, looking anxious about the cake waiting on the counter. When Mum brought out the cake, a small chocolate one with 16 candles, Hannah looked like she might cry, but not from joy. She blew out the candles with a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just a small piece for Hannah, Derek said as Mum began cutting the cake. We don't want to undo all her hard work. Hannah's face flushed with humiliation. Mum served her a sliver of cake, barely a couple of bites. Hannah took one small bite, then excused herself to use the bathroom. When she hadn't returned after 10 minutes, I went to check on her. I found her kneeling on the bathroom floor, fingers down her throat. When she saw me, she burst into tears. I couldn't even handle one bite of my own birthday cake, she sobbed. What's wrong with me? I helped clean her up, noticing how she swayed slightly on her feet, struggling to maintain her balance. Her skin was clammy, her pulse rapid but weak. Something was very wrong. I'm taking you to my apartment tonight, I told her firmly. Pack a bag. She didn't argue, which scared me even more. The normally strong-willed Hannah was too exhausted to resist. After telling Mom that Hannah wanted to spend her birthday night at my place for sister time, I drove Hannah to my apartment. Once there, I documented her physical state with photos with her permission. The visible bones, the patchy skin, the thinning hair. I weighed her on my bathroom scale and was horrified to see she was severely underweight for her height and age. That night, Hannah and I had the most intense conversation of our lives. She finally unburdened herself completely, describing months of severe food restriction, purging, and excessive exercise. She showed me how her hair was falling out in clumps, how her periods had stopped 6 months ago, how she felt cold all the time. I checked her heart rate with my fitness watch and was alarmed to see how dangerously low it was, especially when she stood up. Basic movements left her breathless and dizzy. Hannah, this is serious. You could die from this. Your heart could just stop. Her response chilled me. Sometimes I think that might be easier. First thing the next morning, I called an eating disorder specialist and described Hannah's symptoms. The doctor urged me to bring her in immediately or go to the emergency room if she showed any signs of fainting or chest pain. After the call, I knew I had to confront our parents directly with no holds barred. I drove Hannah back home and asked her to rest in her room while I spoke with Mum and Derek. I had prepared myself with research statistics and the doctor's preliminary concerns. I sat Mum and Derek down in the living room, my hands shaking, but my resolve firm. Hannah is suffering from a severe eating disorder. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. She's malnourished, her heart rate is dangerously low, and she's admitted to purging behaviours. I've made an appointment with a specialist today, and I'm taking her there with or without your support. Derek immediately became defensive. That's ridiculous. Hannah is finally taking her health seriously. She's just committed to fitness. This isn't health, Derek. She's starving herself because of your constant criticism. Do you know what you said to her last week? that her arms still jiggled when she waved. "She's a teenager, not a bodybuilder." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I'd taken of Hannah's emaciated body. "This is your family health journey," I said bitterly. "This is what your concern has done to her." My mother's face paled as she looked at the images, but Derek scoffed. "She's exaggerating for attention. Teenage girls always do this for drama." "Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness," I countered, quoting the statistics I had researched. "This isn't drama, it's life-threatening, and your constant body shaming pushed her into it." Derek stood up, his face reddening. "I have never body shamed anyone. I've been helping her avoid the health problems my sister faced with obesity. I've been teaching her discipline. By monitoring every bite she takes, by keeping a weight chart in your office, by buying her clothes too small as motivation. That's not help, that's abuse." Mom, who had been quiet until now, suddenly erupted. "That's enough, Arlene. You can't come into our home and attack our parenting like this. Derek loves Hannah. He's trying to protect her." "From what? From having a normal body, from enjoying food without guilt, from loving herself." My voice broke with emotion. "Look at her, Mom. Really look at your daughter. She's disappearing before our eyes, and you're letting it happen." The argument escalated with Derek revealing his own distorted views about body image and his need for control. He admitted that his sister had struggled with obesity and related health issues which had shaped his extreme views on weight and diet. But understanding the source of his behavior didn't excuse it. Hannah's life was at stake. After an hour of heated back and forth with Derek increasingly defensive, and my mother torn between her husband and daughters, Mum finally delivered an ultimatum that broke my heart. "Arlene, either you drop these accusations against Derek or you need to leave our home. We can't have this division in our family." I stood up, tears streaming down my face. "I won't drop this because Hannah's life depends on it. I'll leave, but I'm not abandoning my sister. I'll be taking her to the doctor today and I'll support her recovery with or without your help." As I walked upstairs to get Hannah, Mom followed me, grabbing my arm. "You're overreacting. Hannah isn't dying, she's just being a typical image-obsessed teenager." "You're in denial, Mom, and your denial could cost Hannah her life." I helped Hannah to the car despite Derek's protests. After dropping her at my apartment, with instructions to rest, I sent my mother a long text explaining the severity of Hannah's condition and begging her to educate herself about eating disorders. Her response was to block my number. The week following our confrontation was one of the most stressful of my life. I had no contact from my mother or Derek. Hannah had missed her appointment with the specialist because Derek had come to my apartment while I was at work and convinced her to come home, promising things would be different. I tried calling Hannah repeatedly, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I suspected Derek had taken it away. I drove by her school, hoping to catch her during lunch break, but school security policies prevented me from entering without being on the approved visitor list, which I wasn't. I managed to contact a couple of Hannah's friends, who reported that she had been absent from school for several days. When I asked if they knew why, they said they had heard she had a virus, but hadn't been able to reach her either. I was considering contacting Child Protective Services when I received an emergency call from the school nurse. Hannah had collapsed during PE class and had been rushed to the hospital. I raced to the hospital, my heart pounding with fear and guilt. If only I had pushed harder, if only I had found a way to keep her with me, if only I had called authorities sooner. When I arrived at the emergency room, I was told Hannah was in critical condition. She had suffered a cardiac arrhythmia due to electrolyte imbalances caused by severe malnutrition and purging behaviours. Her blood pressure was dangerously low and she was at risk of heart failure. The doctors had started an IV to rehydrate her and correct the electrolyte imbalances, but they were concerned about potential organ damage. In the waiting room, I found my mother. She looked shell-shocked, her face pale and drawn, her hands trembling as she clutched a paper cup of cold coffee. When she saw me, she burst into tears. "I didn't know it was this bad," she kept repeating. "I didn't know." Despite my anger, I sat beside her and took her hand. "This is what I was trying to tell you, Mom. This is why I was so worried." Derek arrived about 30 minutes later, his usual confident demeanour noticeably shaken. When he saw me, his expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for my sister," I replied calmly, determined not to escalate the situation in the hospital. "The school nurse shouldn't have called you. You're not her guardian." "Hannah put me as her emergency contact at school last year," I informed him. She was afraid to come to you or Mom if she got sick or hurt. This revelation seemed to stun both of them. When the doctor came out to update us, his assessment was brutally honest. Hannah is suffering from anorexia nervosa complicated by bulimia. Her condition is life-threatening. Her heart is strained, her electrolytes are dangerously imbalanced, and her body is essentially consuming itself for fuel. She needs immediate and intensive treatment. Derek attempted to downplay the situation. Teenagers are always concerned about their appearance. She's just taken it a bit too far. Once she's stabilized, we can handle this at home with a proper meal plan. The doctor's response was firm. This isn't about vanity, sir. Eating disorders are serious mental illnesses with the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric disorder. Hannah needs specialized care, not just food. And frankly, I'm concerned about the home environment that contributed to this condition. Hannah had apparently confided in the medical staff about the constant criticism she'd faced regarding her body and her stepfather's rigid control over her eating habits. As mandated reporters, the hospital staff had initiated a report to Child Protective Services regarding the emotional abuse Hannah had described. The reality of the situation finally seemed to hit my mother. She broke down completely, admitting that she had noticed changes in Hannah's appearance and behavior, but had ignored the warning signs, believing Derek's assurances that it was just normal teenage behavior and that his approach to health was appropriate. Derek continued to deflect responsibility, insisting that his intentions had been good and that Hannah was misinterpreting his guidance. His inability to acknowledge his role in Hannah's condition only reinforced my belief that he was dangerous to her recovery. The hospital admitted Hannah to the pediatric intensive care unit for medical stabilization. Her condition was so severe that the doctors warned us she wasn't yet stable enough to transfer to an eating disorder treatment facility. First, they needed to address the immediate medical crisis, her heart rhythm abnormalities, electrolyte imbalances, and severe dehydration. Seeing Hannah in the hospital bed connected to monitors and IV lines was devastating. She looked small and had broken her collarbones and cheekbones protruding sharply, her once shiny hair dull and sparse. When she was awake, her eyes held a mix of exhaustion and shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered when we were alone. "I didn't mean to cause so much trouble." "This isn't your fault, Hannah," I assured her, holding her fragile hand. "None of this is your fault." The doctors made it clear that Hannah's recovery would be a long process, first addressing the medical crisis, then the psychological aspects of her eating disorder. They emphasized that family therapy would be an essential component of treatment, as eating disorders often develop within a family context and require changes in family dynamics to support recovery. As the gravity of Hannah's condition became impossible to deny, our family stood at a breaking point. Mum was finally beginning to see the truth, but Derek's continued denial created an impossible situation. Someone would have to choose Hannah's health over maintaining the family's status quo, and I prayed that my mother would finally find the strength to put her daughter first. Hannah spent 2 full weeks in the hospital under close medical supervision. The first few days were focused entirely on medical stabilization, with constant monitoring of her heart rate, blood pressure, and electrolyte levels. She was too weak to get out of bed without assistance, and the doctors explained that her body had been so deprived of nutrition that her muscles, including her heart, had started to break down. My mother spent most days at the hospital, sitting quietly by Hannah's bedside, often with tears streaming down her face. She seemed to be processing the reality of how close we had come to losing Hannah, and the role her own inaction had played in the crisis. Derek visited initially bringing flowers and balloons, as if Hannah had just had a minor surgery rather than a life-threatening condition directly related to his behavior. His visits were awkward, filled with superficial conversations and vague references to getting better soon, without acknowledging why she was there in the first place. During one of his visits, a psychologist who specialized in eating disorders was present. When Derek made a comment about making sure Hannah didn't go too far in the other direction once she started eating normally again, the specialist challenged him directly. "Comments about weight and appearance are extremely harmful to eating disorder recovery," the doctor explained firmly. "Hannah needs unconditional support for her health, not continued focus on her body size." Derek became defensive, insisting he was just concerned about proper nutrition and healthy habits. The psychologist didn't back down, explaining how such concerns often mask control issues and can perpetuate disordered eating. Derek left that day visibly angry, and his visits became less frequent after that confrontation. As Hannah's medical condition stabilized, the treatment team arranged a family therapy session. The therapist, Dr. Lewis, had extensive experience with eating disorders and family dynamics. Derek, my mother, Hannah and I all attended, sitting in an uncomfortable circle in a small consultation room at the hospital. Dr. Lewis began by explaining the family's role in eating disorder recovery. Eating disorders thrive in secrecy and shame, she said. Recovery requires honesty, accountability, and changes in how the family communicates about food, bodies, and emotions. She then asked each of us to share our understanding of how Hannah's eating disorder had developed. Mum spoke first, her voice shaking as she admitted to ignoring warning signs because she'd wanted to believe everything was fine. I was afraid of causing conflict, she confessed. I didn't want to choose between my husband and my daughter. When it was Derek's turn, he spoke at length about his sister's obesity and related health problems, using this as justification for his guidance of Hannah. Everything I did was to prevent her from suffering like my sister did, he insisted. I never meant to cause harm. Dr. Lewis challenged him gently but firmly. Intent doesn't negate impact. Regardless of your intentions, Hannah's experience was one of constant criticism and judgment, which contributed significantly to her eating disorder. Derek became increasingly agitated. So I'm being blamed for trying to help, for caring about her health. This is ridiculous. Everyone's so sensitive these days. Hannah, who had been silent until then, suddenly spoke up. It wasn't help, she said quietly. It made me hate myself. It made me think I didn't deserve to eat. Derek scoffed. That's not what I said. You're twisting my words. The session deteriorated from there, with Derek refusing to acknowledge any harmful behavior on his part. Dr. Lewis ended the session early, but spoke to my mother privately afterward, expressing concern about Hannah returning to an environment where her eating disorder triggers would remain present. That evening, I had a long emotional conversation with my mother at the hospital cafeteria. For the first time, she was fully honest about the years of overlooking red flags in Derek's behavior. He seemed so perfect at first, she said, stirring her untouched coffee. He was stable, responsible, caring. After struggling alone for so long, I thought I'd finally found a partner to share the burden with. But Mom, he was hurting Hannah. She nodded, tears falling. I know, I didn't want to see it. I convinced myself he was right, that it was about health. I was so afraid of being alone again, of going back to working 2 jobs and barely surviving. So you chose him over protecting Hannah. Her face crumpled. I didn't think of it that way. I thought I could have both. I thought we could be a happy family if I just smoothed things over, kept the peace. We can't smooth this over, Mom. Hannah nearly died. The stark truth of that statement hung between us. After a long silence, my mother straightened her shoulders and wiped her eyes. The doctor says Hannah can come home in a few days if we create a supportive environment. I'm going to ask Derek to temporarily move out so she can recover without his influence. I was surprised but relieved by her decision. How do you think he'll take that? Probably not well, she admitted. But I've failed Hannah once. I won't do it again. Derek's reaction to being asked to leave was even worse than anticipated. He became enraged, accusing my mother of turning against him, of choosing teenage drama over their marriage. His angry outburst revealed more of the controlling behavior that had been directed primarily at Hannah until now. You're nothing without me, he told my mother. You'll be back to waitressing and cleaning toilets. Is that what you want, to throw away everything I've given you? My mother stood her ground, though I could see her hands trembling. What I want is for my daughter to live. If you can't understand why that comes first, then you never really loved us. During Derek's outburst, Mum discovered something disturbing. While packing some of his belongings, she found a hidden notebook in his office desk. It contained detailed records of Hannah's weight measurements and caloric intake, tracked almost obsessively for over 2 years. There were notes criticizing even minor weight fluctuations and action plans for when Hannah didn't meet his arbitrary standards. The discovery cemented my mother's resolve. That evening, she changed the locks and left Derek's remaining belongings in the garage. Meanwhile, Hannah was making slow progress with nutritional rehabilitation. The process was physically and emotionally painful. Her body, having adapted to starvation, reacted strongly to regular nutrition. She experienced bloating discomfort and intense anxiety about the food she was required to eat as part of her treatment plan. The eating disorder treatment team explained that full recovery would take months, possibly years. They outlined a comprehensive plan that included ongoing medical monitoring, nutritional counseling, individual therapy, family therapy, and eventually a transitional program to help Hannah return to normal adolescent activities while maintaining recovery. During one particularly difficult feeding session, when Hannah was crying over a bowl of cereal, I sat with her and held her hand. "I know this feels impossible right now," I told her, "but I promise you it won't always be this hard. What if I can never be normal again?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. "You will be, but normal might look different than before, and that's okay. Normal means being healthy, being able to enjoy life without food and weight consuming your thoughts." As Hannah's discharge date approached, my mother filed for legal separation from Derek. It was a decision that clearly terrified her, but she remained resolute. "I should have protected her from the beginning," she told me. "I can't change the past, but I can make sure she's safe now." The day Hannah came home from the hospital was both joyful and terrifying. She was still physically fragile with a strictly scheduled meal plan and numerous therapy appointments. I temporarily moved back into my old room to support Hannah's transition and help my mother implement the recovery plan. During a therapy session in Hannah's second week home, she had an important breakthrough. The therapist had been exploring Hannah's feelings of guilt about the family's breakup. "It's not your fault that Mom and Derek are separating," the therapist explained gently. "Adults are responsible for their own actions and relationships." "But if I hadn't gotten sick, everything would still be normal," Hannah said. "You didn't get sick by choice," the therapist replied. "And what was happening before wasn't actually healthy or normal, even though it might have seemed that way on the surface." For the first time, Hannah nodded in genuine understanding rather than just compliance. "I think part of me always knew something was wrong," she admitted. "I just thought the problem was me." Our first family meal without Derek was awkward but significant. Mum made a simple dinner following the meal plan provided by Hannah's nutritionist. We sat around the table, the empty fourth chair, a silent acknowledgement of how much had changed. "This is weird," Hannah said after a few minutes of forced small talk. Mum and I laughed, releasing some of the tension. "Yes, it is," Mum agreed. "But maybe weird is okay for now." Hannah managed to finish her portion, a major victory in her recovery. After dinner, the three of us sat in the living room watching a movie, just like we used to before Derek entered our lives. It felt like the first tentative step toward healing, not just for Hannah, but for our family as a whole. 6 months after Hannah's hospitalization, our lives had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. Hannah continued with outpatient treatment, gradually regaining both her physical health and her confidence. The road wasn't easy with setbacks and difficult days, but the overall trajectory was positive. With proper nutrition and therapy, Hannah's body began to heal. Her hair regained its shine, her skin its colour. She had gained back weight, reaching a healthy range that her doctors monitored without sharing specific numbers, as weight discussions could still be triggering. After 4 months of recovery work, Hannah decided she wanted to return to swimming, not for weight management, but because she genuinely missed the sport. Her coach, now informed about her eating disorder history, focused on strength and performance rather than appearance. Hannah started with just 1 practice a week, gradually building back her endurance and reconnecting with teammates who had missed her. "I feel different in the water now," she told me after 1 practice. "Before I was always thinking about how many calories I was burning. Now I just enjoy how strong I feel when I swim fast." My mother finalized her divorce from Derek, a process that forced her to confront her role in enabling his behavior. She attended her own therapy sessions, working through the guilt and fear that had led her to prioritize her marriage over her daughter's well-being. "I was so afraid of being alone again," she confided during one of our increasingly honest conversations. "After your father died, the struggle was so intense. When Derek came along, it felt like a lifeline. I convinced myself his controlling behavior was just concern, that he was taking care of us in his own way. Fear makes us do things we wouldn't otherwise do," I said, understanding her better now, even though I couldn't fully forgive her yet. "It's no excuse," she insisted. "A mother's job is to protect her children no matter what. I failed at that. I'm just grateful I have the chance to make it right." Mum and I were rebuilding our own strained relationship through these honest conversations. There were moments of anger and hurt. Times when I couldn't hold back my frustration over how long she had allowed Hannah to suffer. But there were also moments of connection and understanding that gave me hope for our future as a family. Hannah's relationship with Derek was more complicated. As part of her recovery, she needed to establish clear boundaries with him. The therapist recommended limited supervised contact initially if Hannah felt ready for it. After 4 months of no contact, Hannah decided she wanted to meet with Derek in a controlled setting with her therapist present. The session was difficult. but important. Derek had been attending his own therapy, a condition my mother had set for any future contact with Hannah. While he hadn't fully acknowledged the harm he'd caused, he had begun to recognize that his approach to health had been shaped by his own unresolved issues with his sister's obesity and the bullying she had endured. "I thought I was protecting you," he told Hannah during their meeting. "I was wrong about how to do that. I'm sorry for hurting you." Again, it wasn't a complete acknowledgement of his behavior, but it was a start. Hannah didn't forgive him in that moment, but she did express what she needed from him going forward. No comments about her body or eating habits, ever respect for her recovery process, and an understanding that rebuilding trust would take time if it happened at all. Throughout this period, Hannah had good days and challenging ones. Eating disorders don't disappear overnight, and there were times when the eating disorder thoughts returned strongly, especially during stress or transitions. But now, Hannah had tools to recognize those thoughts as symptoms, not truths. She had a support system that understood what she needed. One significant milestone in Hannah's recovery was her decision to speak at a school assembly about eating disorder awareness. With trembling hands but a clear voice, she shared parts of her story focusing not on specific behaviors that might be triggering, but on the importance of seeking help and the reality that eating disorders aren't about vanity, but about pain control and distorted thinking. "Words have power," she told her classmates. "The comments we make about bodies, about food, about appearance, they can cause invisible damage that's just as real as physical injuries. I nearly died from words from trying to live up to impossible standards." Watching her speak, I felt an overwhelming pride. My little sister had found a way to transform her pain into purpose, to use her experience to potentially help others. It wouldn't erase what had happened, but it gave meaning to her suffering. My mother formally apologized to both Hannah and me during a family therapy session. It wasn't a generic, "I'm sorry for everything," but a specific acknowledgement of how she had failed to protect Hannah and dismissed my concerns when I tried to raise the alarm. "I was so afraid of losing the stability Derek provided that I became blind to what was happening right in front of me," she admitted. "I chose the easy path of looking away instead of the harder path of standing up for you. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if that takes time." Hannah, with her growing wisdom and compassion, reached across the space between them and took Mom's hand. "I'm learning in therapy that healing isn't linear. Some days I'm angry, some days I understand. I think that's how forgiveness works too." As I watched them, I realized I was learning to forgive my mother as well. Not because what happened didn't matter, but because holding on to anger wouldn't heal any of us. Mum had made a terrible mistake, but she was doing everything possible to make amends and ensure it never happened again. Hannah's recovery journey continued with setbacks, but consistent progress. There were days when eating remained a struggle, when body image distortions returned with painful intensity. But there were also increasingly frequent days when food was just food, when her body was appreciated for what it could do, rather than how it looked. Through Hannah's recovery, I learned a profound lesson about how words can cause invisible but life-threatening damage. Derek's constant criticism, disguised as concern, had systematically dismantled Hannah's self-worth until she believed she didn't deserve to take up space or meet her most basic needs. What looked like care on the surface had been control underneath a distinction that had nearly cost my sister her life. I also learned about the courage it takes to stand for truth over comfort, health, over appearances and authentic family loyalty that supports rather than enables harm. True love isn't about preserving a facade of family harmony at all costs. It's about fighting for each other's well-being, even when that fight disrupts the peace. The culmination of this difficult chapter in our lives came at Hannah's high school graduation 3 years later. She stood tall in her cap and gown, her body now strong and healthy, her face alight with pride and possibilities. She had been accepted to several colleges and had chosen one with a good psychology program, inspired by the therapists who had helped save her life. As she crossed the stage to receive her diploma, Mum and I cheered until our voices grew hoarse. This moment symbolized not just academic achievement, but survival resilience and a future that had nearly been stolen from her. Later, as we celebrated at her favorite restaurant, Hannah ate her meal without anxiety, laughed freely, and spoke excitedly about her plans for the future. Looking at her, it was hard to believe how close we had come to losing her. The scars remained both visible in family photos, where her emaciated face told the story of her darkest days, and invisible in the ongoing work she did to maintain her recovery. But beyond the scars was something beautiful, a young woman who had learned to value herself, a mother, who had found the courage to stand for her children, no matter the personal cost, and a family that had rebuilt itself around truth and authentic care, rather than appearances and control. If you've stayed with me through this story, I want to thank you. Standing up for those we love sometimes means standing against people we also care about. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone vulnerable, even when it caused conflict? Share your experience in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more conversations about family dynamics and the courage to speak difficult truths. Remember, your voice matters, especially when you use it to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves.